Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of Puff Puff Planet here. We decided to do things a little bit differently today, and we get a lot of questions from people, right? So what we wanted to do was take some of those common questions that we get and basically answer them today on the show. So we always tell you to comment on the comment section, shoot us an email, call us if you want us to do certain content or you want us to do a certain show. We just want to show you we listen. So these are some of the questions that we ask. We'll just get right into it. The first one is a pretty popular one, I think, that, a lot of people have probably been asked in general, or they've been told funny stories about how it's so different. But this one came as, the weed we had back in the day was so much less powerful. What's the difference now? Right. So I think it's kind of interesting. I think there's a few things that answer that. One, I think just the growing method in general, right? Like you have to remember, weed has been illegal for a long time. So traditional, institutions, colleges, groups, businesses, private, whatever it is, they weren't really able to do research, right? I mean, the government was doing research, I'm sure, right? The G13 or whatever they used to call it, but for like very specific medical cases. But, not a lot of people did research and innovation on growing techniques and method, and we're growing the way they did now. So I think a big part was a lot of it was outdoor too, which you can grow great outdoor. There's a lot of brands that grow great outdoor, but they know what they're doing at this point. They're pulling the plant at a certain time. They're doing certain things with the plant that are making it sun grown and actually good weed, right? So we talk about terpenes in a lot of these episodes, right? And how terpenes have an effect on that high and that experience you get. And I think we would all know that when terpenes are sitting baking in the sun, if you remember, like back in the day, like we would call it now, like the swag, right? Back in the day, it's like this dry bud, right? And it's got THC in it, so you're going to get high off of it, but you're not going to get like you do nowadays, right? So, would you agree, right? What else? Growing methods, genetics?
I think genetics, they're breeding for THC potency now. So you're just seeing, they're keeping the mother plant of the one that's testing the highest, that looks the highest, that has the most trichomes. So you're seeing a lot of that like genetic breeding, and you're seeing just a lot of genetics that are playing a big factor into the potency of
the
THC.
Experience. They're breeding them for
the curing process, like you were mentioning, drying your flower more than, curing it longer and lowering that humidity increases that THC potency.
Not in the direct sun.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Just in a curing room. Right.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, you can degrade THC down into CBN and stuff like that too, so you got to be careful with that.
That's not really like you're KO'd.
Yeah, it's like when you get a nug that's like kind of like yellowy, like goldish in color, and you're like
the one in the rafters from 10 years ago.
Yeah, you smoke that, like you're getting CBN, dude. You're going to sleep, but
really
it'll still get you high. Yeah, And have you had some weed in your rafters? Yeah, that's the issue. Like if you don't have your weed stored at home in like a proper, like airtight, light-proof container, like you're gonna pop that baby open after some time and be like, why is this nug brown? Smell like my basement. Yeah.
Like actual grass.
Like grass.
Like literal grass.
And then like sometimes I'll smoke it because I'm trying to go to bed, but like once it hits that, like it's just gonna put you to sleep.
Yeah, it's gonna. So it's basically so it's down to what we said: growing techniques, then genetics, drying and curing. I'd have to imagine. So the terpenes, and it's just we're matured as an industry, right? Anything you learn to do better, you're going to be better and produce a better agriculture, right? And, agriculture gets better,
and you're talking like an entire infrastructure for cannabis, right? Like they're harvesting and you're getting it within this close to harvest. So like a lot of times back in the day, like who knows how long your guy had the stuff on him from his guy who had the stuff on him
from that one country to this country,
from that one state, from that one country to this country. So you're getting like some degraded, brown, nasty kind of stuff.
So they didn't store it in ideal conditions when traveling across
borders. Yeah, they just shoved it inside of something inside of something.
Inside of a tire.
Yeah, inside of something. So,
don't store your weed in a tire.
There's so much, and like you said, people were just throwing the plant in the ground in their backyard or finding it, somewhere. And now we're adding nutrients and we're adding soils. We've learned about the chemistry of this plant. We're adding back everything we know it needs to become huge, powerful, high in potency. So, you're just not dealing with, throwing it in the ground anymore and just smoking whatever.
And which you could do, but there's still the post treatment, even if you're growing it well by throwing it in the ground and using an organic method or very just purely nature as a method. Like there's still things you have to do, like they dry and the cure after, that ultimately bring out a lot of what you feel.
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Okay. So we'll move on to number 2.
Yeah.
So another one was, and I'm going to have you do this one, right? What happens when my tolerance from smoking gets too high? What can I transition to next? What's the next step? I know we had an episode previously about edibles, but like, what would you say if you're a really high tolerance user? Is it like that? Concentrates? What do you think?
I mean, my first, suggestion, which isn't always people's favorite, is take a freaking break, dude. I'm not trying to tell you not to consume your cannabis, but if you're smoking a lot of
the reset.
Yeah, if you're smoking a lot of vapes or concentrates, those skyrocket your tolerance to oblivion.
Because they're concentrated. So,
and now you're finding too, joints in the market, very popular, are infused joints. They have concentrate. So people are going from
some of
smoking,
my favorites, by the way, lately.
Yeah. Oh, same. I love an infused joint, but let me tell you
too.
is I, smoked for 8 years straight. I have had my med card. I can't remember in 8 years a day that I didn't smoke weed, right? And that's like, one day I woke up and I'm like, that might be a problem, and I should just reset and tell myself that like I can do this. So I took about 9 months, almost a year off from cannabis last year. I still was working in it, still loving it, still growing it. I was just like, I'm not going to ingest any cannabis, right? Like I'll use topicals, but I stopped smoking for 9 months. And I went back, I'm like, I'm ready to smoke. Like I woke up one day, I'm like, today's the day, right? So I go into the cabinet, I pull some weed out.
Was it a good day or because it was a bad day?
It was a good day.
Okay.
But I was like, the weather's right. I'm gonna go smoke a joint. And I went into the cabinet and I pulled some weed out to roll a joint, right? And not even thinking about it. Like at the point where I was smoking for 8 years, I was smoking the highest THC potency I could find. I was the give me highest THC potency girl, right? Anywhere I went. So I had like some GMO, 32%. I'm like, I'm gonna smoke the shit out of this. I rolled this. I like lit this joint and I hit it 3 times and I'm like, I'm having a panic attack.
Toast.
I'm having a panic attack. I'm like, this is too much. And I was like, what's going on with me? And I'm like, oh my God, you just smoked 32% weed and you don't have a tolerance anymore. So part of me, I went through like a roller coaster of emotions. I was like, I'm pissed. I want my tolerance back. And then I'm like, but this is nice.
Yeah, this is kind of, you don't have to consume so much.
This is cheap. Yeah, this is cheap. And this is like good for my body that I'm not like inhaling so much, And so I realized at that point that, I was like, I got to do some research. Like at what point, because I've heard friends go, I've taken 2 weeks off and then I smoke again. It just comes right back. It was pointless, And I'm like, okay, so at what point? I think they said something like 6 weeks for most people resets your tolerance on cannabis. So like 6 weeks off from cannabis. So I just went the whole year for maybe no reason, but it was one of those things that I'm like,
6 weeks next time.
Yeah, 6 weeks next time. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, if your tolerance is getting too high, maybe we lean off the concentrates and the stuff that's getting you really, really baked, or we just take like a cold turkey, just, reset your tolerance a little bit. But outside of that, I mean, you're moving into, like I said, if you're a flower smoker and your tolerance to flower is increasing, now we're looking at infused products, moon rocks and infused joints.
And it depends what method you want, right? Because if you want to keep smoking, obviously, maybe that puts edibles out of the pit mix and you move to a concentrator.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're a flower smoker that wants to increase that, I'm telling you, moon rocks, infused joints, topping your bowls with keef, rolling up some wax in your joints, whatever it is. But if you're an edible consumer, we're saying, all right, well, you have the opportunity to kick up your dose a bunch, but you can also switch to like RSO, like you've said you've done in the past. And maybe we switch you from an edible to a concentrate, right? And so all this is going to do, again, too, is compoundingly increase your tolerance even more. So you're going to need more and more. Because I remember, I used to go, before going to bed, I would rip 5 to 6 dabs. I'd eat 100 milligrams plus of an edible, and I'd smoke a joint. And I'm like,
insane. I've never been there. I've maxed out at 80. Well, 100, 80, 100.
It was bad. It wasn't something like, that's kind of for some people bragging, but for me, I don't want to brag. Like that's why I took a year off, because I'm like, okay, I gotta reset this for my body, because these levels are just not something I want to be taking in every day. But I would put a little bit of RSO, right on an edible, 100 milligram True North, pop it in my mouth.
Oh, so you're putting it, okay.
Yeah, I put it on my edible.
Which is, you can do that too. You brought up a good point I wanted to make on the pre-rolls too. A lot of the times with the infused pre-rolls, you can buy them, right? But if you really like infused pre-rolls, because sometimes for people that want to increase the tolerance, that's the next best step. You can also maybe try that. And then if you want to infuse your own, just get some deli style flour, get yourself some concentrate, usually a dryer, like a crumble.
Sugar,
Yeah, sugar, something like that.
THCA.
Diamonds, whatever. And infuse your own pre-rolls. You can do it that way. But I was curious. I wanted to ask you on this. what do you think about, so if you have a really high tolerance on smoke, on consuming flower, do you think moving to like the vape pens, the traditional vape pens, do you think that will help kick it up and then you'll just develop that tolerance? Or do you think the next best step I'm talking high tolerance people, right, with flower, moving directly to like a dabbable concentrate?
I mean, I would definitely say that if you're kicking up the notch, like you've already gone through the ringer with infused pre-rolls, moon rocks, all of that, like you're pretty much one step ahead and heading into concentrates already. You know, I wouldn't necessarily, I would prefer that they would try concentrates over a vape cart. Just because I think the high is a little bit more similar in the concentrates. So the vape carts nowadays have a lot of botanical terps, unless we're talking a live resin cart or a rosin cart. I would definitely tell them, you know, go for a cured or a live resin or a rosin and smoke that. Take, you know, and that's a venture in itself, right? Like gotta get a rig.
And try the cured and the live ones too, because they're just both different. People always try to go one for, I like
the
both.
Flavor is
depending on the manufacturer too, the processor, they're just different. I mean, I've tried processors where I've liked literally they're cured better than other people's lives and vice versa and back and forth. Actually being part of that High Times judge contest thing this year as one of the judges was really cool to get to try all those brands, because I don't think I would have ever tried that wide variety of the concentrates. But for me, especially being in concentrates for many years before in terms of the industry, I just really recently started liking those a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's what I tell people is like, you know, there's definitely always a more concentrated form of THC we can turn to, but realizing that when you're moving yourself from flower into concentrates, there's really not much more place to go there after that, right? So we're trying to learn how to taper that high, and I'm you know, telling people too, it's about the terp content. With a lot of this, it's your high can come from that terpene content. So maybe we're finding flowers with higher terp contents, maybe we're finding concentrates with higher terp contents, whatever we can do. I mean, there is a point where, you know, my brother has been smoking his entire life. So like 25 plus years he's been smoking. And he's like, yeah, I just smoke to smoke, because it's like he's just used to the feeling. He goes, I don't really get that.
That's what a lot of people
anymore.
like too, though. With even the people that transition to edibles, smoking almost becomes like a treat to them.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I've been, because I try to. I mean, I don't want to smoke all the time smoking, so I try the different methods. But smoking becomes a treat, like the blunt that we mentioned. Yeah,
switching up your ingestion method absolutely can help your tolerance in each of those methods, right? So like not smoking flower every day, but rotating between a flower and an edible every few days. Like you're gonna keep it low on both sides. You're gonna keep your tolerance for flower lower. You're gonna keep your edible tolerance lower.
That's how I am
switching it up, you know, taking a dab one night, smoking a joint the next night, eating an edible the next night, like that is a really good way to keep your tolerance in balance. But like I said, you know, always realize that a good place. I tell my brother all the time, I'm like, okay, well, you keep spending all this money on weed and you keep smoking it and you're not feeling high, you know, that must suck. Like, why don't you take a break? He's like, I can't take a break. I'm like, you gotta take a break, you know? So it's those other things too that I try to tell him. I'm like, you know, the break is important, even though none of us want to part with our friendly cannabis, you know, sometimes that's what you got to do.
I go loony, I think. Yeah.
That's what my brother says. So, you know, there's always something that's that extra step for you. So, you know, like you're saying, you're not getting high enough off flower, start switching to edibles for a bit, switch back and forth, try to find that.
Try a little bit of everything, basically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which actually brings in perfect bridge to the third one that I was going to talk about. Question was, you know, I want to try concentrates, but I heard it needs fancy rigs. I heard you need this fancy hardware. I heard dabs and torches, right? So I'll pretty much break it down like this. You have your original rig, we'll call it, right, which is like a glass rig, almost like what you notice as like a bong from the past, just different setup, we'll say, and how it's constructed. So you're not putting flour in it, you're using it for concentrate. So basically what people will do is they'll put the dab in, and we'll get into this another time, whether it's cold versus, you know, whether you put it in there and heat it right there, you heat it, or drop it in after. Different methods. Water. But that is the more complicated model, right? And a lot of people, like connoisseurs, will love that because they'll say it gives them the fullest flavor, the best just aroma, the feel and everything, right? But that's not really the ideal method for your mom or your dad or your grandma or grandpa or somebody, right? They're not going to rip a dab. Some of them will, which is cool. You should try it. It's awesome. But what I was going to really say is cool, I think, and I've talked about this before with people. I think industry progression and maturity of the industry and like where we end up going with these consumption methods really does come down to also the device manufacturers. If you make things convenient for people to consume, like you see with a lot of the vaporizers and the pens now, you make it easy for them to consume. People are going to consume that method more. So traditionally you get like these, like the 510, we call them vape carts that you twist on a battery. But if you really want to do real dabbable concentrates, like really high quality concentrates, they make a lot of different devices now. Yocan makes a bunch of different devices. Puffco makes the Puffco pen. That's the one I have. I love it. You basically just twist off the top in many of these, put your dab right in there, close it up, and then you end up hitting it like a normal vape pen. So it's on the go. And a lot of them even have like a secondary storage inside of them, basically. Concentrate. And those are the really convenient ones. Then you have simply like disposable ones now made with higher end material. And I would say probably the last one would be
a nectar collector.
Oh, there we go. Like kind of the middle of the road, not complex, but you're not going to toss it in your jean pocket and take it out with you like the regular traditional Puffco or a nectar collector. Where you don't need a torch and a lot of fancy equipment, but it's still kind of an all-in-one electrical device with easy buttons to use, right? So the long story short is go into your local smoke shop, go online, go into your local smoke shop, support a small business. But if you can't find anything, go online, check out what they have out there. There's something for everybody, all different price points. And I think when you realize some of those things that are out there, it'll open up a whole other world.
It looks intimidating, way more intimidating than what it is, right? So people are always like, "What is that?" And then my biggest thing is always like, "You need and they're like, "It's just not. It's such a little amount for that price, right? Like, gram of wax for $30, like that's not much." And I'm like, "You don't
even know
a lot. Like, you just need to like get this thing hot and touch it to the side, like just
literally like." I can't even show like a half of a pea. Actually, like literally, if you think of a traditional like a green pea, that would be a massive dime.
Yeah,
a massive dab.
You would have to like take that pea and cut it into 4.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like, just touch to the side. I remember taking a guy through his whole first experience. Bought a rig, bought butane, bought a torch, and I'm like, he goes, "All right." I go, "So a couple things, like you gotta like." Don't put too much in there. Also, if you put too much in there, you don't have to inhale it all, right? Like, you don't have to clear the bong. You don't have to clear the bong.
Well, your first time, you almost have to be, you got forced them to clear the bong.
I know. I was just like, I'm like, if you clear the bong, you're going to be way too ripped. I'm just telling you. So, it's fun to guide people through that, but it seems a lot more intimidating what it is. And there's a lot of people that make the switch for a tolerance reason and for a monetary reason, right? Like I'm saying, you're going $30 a gram. Like, hell no. I'm saying that gram, when you first start dabbing, is going to last you a long time. And it's cleaner, like the vapor, the smoke, the smell.
You can do it in your house. It literally doesn't even
You can dab
smell.
in your house and within 3 minutes it's dissipated, So that's why I don't smoke flower in my house. I'll take dabs in my house. That's what I do. I mean, it does look a little sketch. You got to be careful with the torch and the hot rig. But I mean, outside of that, if you're just being smart about it, it's
or using one of the simpler ones you're comfortable with, right? It's like,
like a Puffco or it's an enamel, there's
that's kind of where I'm loyal to on the vapor.
There's so many
devices,
things that you can, now there's devices that you can just hit 3 buttons and it auto heats for you and then you just rip it and then it turns off.
That brings up a good point. I will say one thing that I always recommend when looking at these, and I believe at this point most of them have it, but I can't stress enough adjustable temperature in good ranges, because I know, and this is a whole other thing, I'm sure we should actually do a concentrate only one day, but we'll touch on this another time. But basically, like, cannabinoids will burn at different temperatures. We already know that. You'll get different experiences of the hit in regards to like flavor and aroma and feel and everything if you put them on those different temperature settings. So I know, like, I think mine, the one I go up to, I think I use like my purple, say, make like 530 degrees or something like that. But yeah, they have a range all the way down high mid 4s to up to
and they always say like the higher the temperature, the bigger the rip, the less flavor. The lower the temperature, the smaller the rip, the more flavor. So that's kind of a rule of thumb I tell people, because I mean it's hard, especially with the traditional rig. They're like, so how do I know it's hot enough? And I'm like, you just until it turns red, and then when it turns red, let it not be red for a second, and then drop your concentrate in. I mean, it's just one of those.
That's the one that people argue about, as they call it, like the cold versus
versus hot. Well, there's all that, and then there's, are you using a glass bang or a quartz bang, or the heat, the temp? Are you using a titanium bang?
And I guess the glass. So that's what I was told with the glass. The glass is going to give you the most natural, right? Versus like the Puffcos, they have the
The ceramic.
Ceramic? Yeah, ceramic.
Yep. So there's just so many things. But go to your local smoke shop. They're going to be able to guide you through that at least. Or, come into a dispensary, even if we have the rigs or we usually have rigs. But, whatever it is, we'll definitely even be able to just explain that process to you. I mean, like.
They make silicone ones too. I know we've carried that. So you don't have to worry about the glass. So it's like a traditional rig, but it's not going to get knocked off by your dog's tail.
Easy to clean.
Literally, I had my dog right now. Aussies. So they haven't had tails. My dog now has a tail. So I have to like think about that all the time. Like, what glass am I leaving out in the literally? I was like, oh crap!
Tail.
I'm like,
what is
I'm just not used to it. Aussies don't have tails, so I'm never used to shit being pushed off the thing. So you know what? This brings us into a good one. And we don't have to dig into all the craziness that happened in the media years back. That's just that was some crap, right? But is vaping marijuana safe?
Yeah,
right?
Anytime you're inhaling something into your lungs, you want to do it with caution,
yeah.
right? So I'm never gonna say vaping is super healthy for you, but I'm also, the biggest thing that's more of a danger is the heat, the temperature to which you have. So some people crank it up on their pens, or they had some fancy pens in the market now that you can screw your stuff onto. That you just crank that up and it's hot.
And this is vaporization, not combustion. When we talk about traditional smoking of flower with a lighter,
people are trying to, most batteries have an adjustable voltage. They're turning it up as high because they want to get the biggest rips possible. But then they're going, it's so harsh, or it's leaking out of the top, and it's like, well, yeah, when you heat, liquid to a certain temperature, you're changing the viscosity of it. It thins out so much, and it's going to come back out. Or if you ever had, try to pull on a vape cart and then the liquid comes through and it's hot, that's because you have it way too hot, or it's dry firing in your pocket, something weird. But, for the most part, as long as you're getting your vapable products from a credible dispensary, it is safe to consume, right? Because you can say the things that were going around in the black market were they're cutting it with vitamin E. They were cutting them with things as filler to fill it because they didn't actually have enough distillate oil to fill these full grams. So everything that's in a dispensary is run through state testing. So I can say with confidence, that, even if there is something that slips through or slips by, it's caught pretty quickly.
Yep.
And put on recall and held us accountable as a store to pull those products off the
There's a process in
shelf.
place to do what they can to mitigate risk to consumers.
Absolutely. But it's like it's like an E. coli outbreak with romaine lettuce, right? Like there's just only so much that you can do to control it. But if you're getting a vapable product from a dispensary, you should feel safe to consume that. Everything in moderation. Everything you thought about, think about the temperature you're putting this through your lungs at, think about if you're...
Or your body yourself, what you're dealing with.
There's also rosin vapes now. So if you're super concerned with any type of a solvent left behind or any type of anything, you're looking at a higher price point, but you're looking at definitely a healthier product. So if I'm talking dabs or vapes, I'm trying to go solventless. I'm trying to go rosins most of the time. Obviously, that's a price point that not everyone can afford, but that's going to be the safest, so to say. But, everything is tested. Everything is credible. So you should feel comfortable going into a dispensary and buying a vape. Now, you shouldn't feel so comfortable buying a vape from your friend off the street or in a black market. You just don't really know the process that they're going
Unless
through.
it at this point is like a trusted, licensed caregiver that them, what they're growing, they're processing it properly. Then that's like the only other thing that you just have to know your sources. But if you don't know that person, because they exist, but not all of them do. So if you don't know that person, get it from the dispensary, basically. Exactly. And honestly, at this point too, in any mature market, we've seen prices level out to good consumer levels. It's always a matter of what's available in the market. We always try to bring the highest quality products in, not just the lowest dollar ones, but in general, they are affordable. So another good one was, this is kind of a hot topic right now, I think. Do I need a medical card, right? Do we need to get a medical card? What's the difference? We talked about and it actually shows how quick times are changing, right? The original episode, I believe it was like 1 or 2, we were talking about the difference versus medical, recreational. One of the biggest differences from a financial perspective is taxes, right? So medical is 6%, and then recreational is 6% with a 10% tax with it as well. So there's the cost factor of it. In another episode actually with Pete from Whispering Greens, we talked a little bit about medical growers that are still out there and how, because there's different licensed medical rec, right? Those medical growers, like what exactly they're growing. It is for a specific use. And then at the time it was also edibles. So you could get edibles in 200 milligrams in medical versus 100 milligrams in rec. Now fast forward lately now we can do 200 milligrams on recreational, but they still have to remain 10 milligram pieces, right?
Or 10 milligram servings.
Servings, yes. Okay.
So they can do, a 20 milligram
so
piece.
We're one down with
half.
the medical side. So so let's save that to where,
I think that's definitely something like the market's coming out with those gummies. If you haven't heard yet, that's exciting news. If you're an edible user, there's still some, products obviously back ordered in production for that. But, people are saying, hey, I thought they were going to get rid of medical. Look what they're doing. This is where they're heading. I can almost say confidently that while they may dissolve the medical side license-wise, right? Not needing licenses to grow medical or process medical or to sell medical, I think they'll keep the state registry, patient registry, a thing and provide those people that are still having med cards with that discount on tax.
Yeah.
So while there might
Which
not
I
be
understand
that
and respect
differentiated,
people need.
yeah, because it's a medical thing for a lot of people. So while they may not differentiate the side you're purchasing on or the product on this side or that side, which will make it easier for retailers, processors, growers. I mean, the license fees, all of those things are now extra cash in your pocket that you were going to be shelling out before. It definitely keeps the consumer base happy because there's always been this tit for tat between med and rec customers, right? Like, why do they have this and I don't, and they have that and I don't, and I'm like, what are you talking? Like, do you go into Kohl's and you're like, why does this section have this and I don't have this? It's like you just kind of shop with what's your side, right? So that's something that we've been hearing a lot about. It's all rumors. We don't know what's going on, but we do know that they're kind of making those strides in that direction. They've lowered license fees in the past couple of years, have halved license fees, have said, okay, this doesn't have a license fee anymore. So we're looking at that might be the trend that they're trying to go through to do that. But I think that they'll still keep the patient registry around for the sake of allowing people to have that, break in taxes for their medical product.
And again, everything always levels out to a stable rate too. So with producers out there, we're able to get things at, I would say, a more stable cost for some of those medical patients now. So even that 10% difference, I mean, it makes a big difference, but it's at least not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, and for sure, switching, merging sides will just make it better for the whole of everybody. The med patients will have access to everything, rec as well. So I think that's not a bad place to be, and I don't think...
I like that. Hybrid.
Yeah, I don't think a med card is a bad investment still. I still think it's a pretty good investment to get a med card. They're so cheap now. They're between $80 to $120, and they last a year, maybe I think it's 2 years maybe now, and it allows you to get that discount in taxes. And a lot of stores are doing a 10% off med for med customers on the rec side to cover their excise tax. So even if they you don't have what you want on the med side, you can get what you want on the rec side, which we do at Planted, So that's something that we tell everyone. We are, Planted, the only shop in our, town that does medical, right? So we've got a lot of our med patients. We love them. And so we also do our own med side, keep all our own med
you
products.
guys bring a ton of med products.
But we also just offer them that 10% off on the rec side. So while you're there, you see something else you want, you can definitely grab it. And we'll give it to you for that same,
so you get
price.
both sides, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, not a bad investment. We're definitely still waiting what the state's going to be doing. But, I wouldn't say... by the end of the year, we're going to be done with med. I don't think so. So,
we're kind of just waiting and watching. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's another one for you. And before I go into this question too, I will say an overarching statement that, whenever we talk about commercial versus like some of the caregiver growing in operations, we're an overarching statement, right? So as you know, in any industry, there's people that do things right and there's people that don't do things right. So there's obviously caregivers that are in not what we consider normal licensed environment that produce really good stuff specifically for those medical patients. So we in no way, shape, or form think that that's a bad choice for medical users. So with that said, the question is, so my buddy grows marijuana.
Yeah.
What's the difference between that and what can I get at a dispensary?
Yeah.
So what is that?
Yeah,
difference?
the difference is, what are they growing? What strains? I was a caregiver for a long time. My mom was. A lot of my friends were. I'll say some of the best cannabis that I've seen has come out of people's basements,
Absolutely.
out of caregiver grows. Yeah. They're also growing strains specific to their patients sometimes, what their patients' needs are and their patients' desires. So that's something that's important too, to think about and to factor in. And also, backlash towards the big grows. I think they do a great job, but when it's in your house and your home and your patients and the people you care about, there's a lot of love and passion that's poured into that flower. So you're getting good flower. You can definitely say that I've definitely seen some caregiver grows that I was not impressed with, but that's the same thing of I've seen some big grows that are licensed that I'm not impressed with. So there's not a whole ton of difference, you know, but at least when you go into a dispensary, you are knowing what it's testing at. You are knowing the strain has been, you know, genetically verified. You do know that, you know, where the flower is coming from. It was a clean facility. You do know that it's getting tested. So those are the things that, you know, you can't really control in a caregiver environment. You know, a lot of caregivers don't choose to test product. Some do in small batches. But you're also, you know, not really sure like what their means or their methods are for growing. So there's not a whole ton of difference in the product. I've seen some fire stuff come out of caregiver. I've seen some fire stuff come out of, you know, bigger licensed grows. But, you know, if you're a patient to somebody, they can probably tailor their strains or something for you, which makes that more beneficial. But I'm sure your buddy grows some good marijuana, you know? I mean, marijuana
couldn't have said it better. Yeah, it's kind of like I said, teach their own, who you know, and trust your source kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Okay. And then I got one more too. And so we have 4 more questions here. So next one too, I got you on here. So tried edibles, didn't seem to work. I know there's a super long, crazy explanation, but like what is the gist of it when there's just some people that just don't work?
Yeah. So, you know, I guess in layman's terms, you could say everyone hereditarily, they take genes from their parents, right? So you're inheriting certain enzymes from your parents, and there's, you know, what they call the CYP450 enzymes. It's comprised of over, they call them the SIP enzyme. That's you actually see a product in the market that's called SIP. CYP.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
it's a drink. It's a drink mix product. So kind of funny play on that, but the CYP, there are like there's over 30 CYP enzymes that are responsible for breaking down, basically telling your liver to kickstart the breaking down of like pharmaceutical drugs or booze or whatever, cannabis even. So from your parents, you can get, you know, these enzymes are found within the genetic code. So just not getting too deep into that, but your parents can basically give you a couple variations of this enzyme. And it can be what they call the wild card enzyme, which is, you know, is what's normal, right? Like you can process THC, you can process pharmaceutical drugs properly, metabolize them properly. You have a pretty good metabolism. And then they've got, you know, other ones that are basically, if you get an enzyme from your parents, it's a slower metabolism. Those with a slower metabolism in those enzymes, edibles hit them so hard.
It seems backwards almost.
It does seem backwards, right? But the people, the way to think about it is a fast metabolism. Your body metabolizes it so fast that it doesn't even have time to feel the effects of the THC. So a lot of times those people too take Tylenol and feel nothing. They take other pharmaceutical drugs and don't get much benefit because their body processes all of it so fast. So then you get, like I said, the people who are slow metabolism, so they eat 2 milligrams or 5 milligrams and they're freaking out of this world, and it lasts longer. So their body's just taking this time to metabolize it. So, you know, it is, what's so crazy is that this actually is hereditary. So you can probably see similarities in what, you know, the effects that your parents get or your siblings get on cannabis through the same way that you get on cannabis.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So it's one of those things too that you can also factor in a couple other things, right? Not only your like genes that you inherited, but also like gastrointestinal. Like, do you have gastrointestinal problems? People with IBS and things like that who have problems digesting.
Yes. I read about
also can't really break down edibles because their body's not digesting things properly. So if your body's not if you have an issue with digestion, and the whole way that you get, you know, high from an edible is being digested, being broken down, their likelihood of you actually feeling an edible is very low. A traditional edible, they might be able to try like a fast acting and have that work for them. But it's something that I tell people all the time. I'm like, if you don't feel an edible, like maybe it's time to try a different ingestion method. Maybe it's time to switch it up. We had a guy come in, talking to Michelle, our cannabis coach, and he was eating 200 milligrams of traditional edible every night. He was like, I'm really not getting that high. And I'm like, that's wild. So she's like, have you tried fast acting? He's like, no.
Totally
she's like, try fast acting, eat like 40 or 50 milligrams and see what happens. And he called the shop the next day and he goes, I just want to let you know that fucking worked.
That's so funny.
Yeah, he was so excited. He's like, it worked. I'm like, what? He's like, I ate 40 milligrams and I was so blazed. Like, it worked of the fast acting. So
that happiness. He was.
Yeah, I'm like, yes. You know, so those are the things that people don't realize is that edibles aren't working for you. We can probably try to find a method around that. Realizing what you ate, when you ate. You know, your body size, your tolerance, like
one of the billion factors.
Yeah, do you have
yeah.
gastrointestinal problems? What enzymes did you get?
Be brave and try it.
So, you know, I can tell you these are all reasons, but when someone comes to me and says I don't really feel edibles, it's like, all right, there's like 17 reasons why you might not feel an edible, so let's try to like
Try
figure out
else.
what it is. Yeah, exactly. So, that's the biggest thing for most people don't realize is there's so much that plays into cannabis, like neurologically, physiologically, biologically, the way this plant interacts with our body, that you have to really be patient with it and realize that it might be like upsetting or frustrating that your friend can eat 10 milligrams and get totally blazed and you wasted
can't. Some money trying to,
and you're trying to chase that high and you just can't get it. Like, I get that.
Or take a little bit of edibles and smoke too.
Yeah.
A lot of people combo them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So,
this was a good one too. So I want to get cannabis delivered discreetly. Is that possible? Short answer is yes. I know it kind of depends down to, well, you got to think of it this way. Depends on, your neighbors, right? Who's looking, who's intuitive to see that. But what I can tell you is some of the platforms, I believe Weed Maps maybe does it. They have an option you can select. And sometimes I think people can leave a note, right? Am I off?
Yeah. So, I mean, the short and quick answer is it must be done discreetly.
Yeah, of course.
My employees.
Good point, actually. I know. Yeah, okay.
My employees, the vehicles, the bag, everything is unmarked. They're not wearing a Planet t-shirt. The car's not saying Planet. It's not saying dispensary. It's not saying weed, because then that makes a target out of your own employees. So, they're coming to the door just as average Joe, maybe looking like DoorDash, bringing you some Chinese takeout,
THC Coney dogs.
Yeah, exactly. So they're coming up to the door with a bag, signing off. My staff, like I said, there's really nothing that says like, hey, this is cannabis. It could, nowadays with all the delivery platforms, it could be anything.
Yeah, that's true. There's you look out at your neighbors' houses. There's like 8 different people flying in and out delivering.
The biggest
Amazon.
issue, with discreet is that we don't have a process, like a way to process online payments yet. That's coming, a good way for customers to do that. I mean, there are some out there. They're just really expensive on the customer end or on the business end. But we still have to take payment for products. So it's only as discreet as we can't just leave it on your front door, like, contactless pickup from Domino's. But, we can be discreet about it, right? You can ask us, hey, like, come around the side door, the back door, things like that make it you more
Small
comfortable.
notes.
Whatever it is, we'll take that in. But most of the time, all delivery is pretty discreet.
Okay. And I'm going to skip one for the sake of time here, and because we're going to have a bunch of these. We're going to do more of these. We promote you to ask us questions. Tell us, email us, call, shoot in the comments what questions you have. We'll answer them. But I did want to touch on one because we mentioned it a few times in one of our last episodes. We mentioned it today. So what does solventless mean? So when that's a popular one I get, right? Because you see a lot of these different concentrates. So going back to the effect, try everything. There's a different effect of everything, whether it's a solventless hash concentrate, a hydrocarbon, standard vape pens, like we said. Try it. But solventless in general is just really popular in the market. The reason it costs a little bit more money is because you get a little bit smaller yields, and it takes a lot to get a little. Obviously to differentiate strain to strain how that is, but in a general sense, they're using ice water and, like I said, ice water and agitation to really kind of mechanically separate the cannabinoids and then press it using pressure and heat. So it's not being absorbed into a solvent to be processed, basically. And to note too, there's really not a safety thing between them too. Solvent-based concentrates are completely safe. They're regulated. You have to evaporate that solvent back out, and many states have extremely low limits called ppms, parts per million, literally that much that you have to be under. So they're all safe. It's just a different effect, different flavor and aroma.
I would definitely say, like, if you are curious about solventless, there's easily a 1-minute video on YouTube or on Instagram, anywhere.
Anywhere.
You follow any of the big concentrate companies?
We'll do one.
But you follow any of the big concentrate companies, they'll show you exactly how solvent is made in 1 minute. I can't remember who I was watching on Instagram the other day, but I'm like, I'm watching these videos all the time. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm like, someone could just watch this and immediately understand what is solventless and why. So those are the fun videos. If you're really curious, they're out there. Like, look up solventless concentrates, watch it be made, and realize why, the yield that they get is so much smaller and why it's so much more expensive, but so good. So
I think with that said, I think we got our next episode. I think we should we'll do one deep dive into some different concentrates. So that wraps up for today. Thank you everybody for watching, listening. Again, any comments, reach out, let us know what you want to learn about. And I wanted to do one last thanks again to Detroit Edible Company and Cannalicious for sponsoring this episode for you. Cheers, everyone.
See ya.